Hello,
Hey, Bob.
David.
How are you today?
Good evening. I'm doing well, David. We're here on the eve of Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, the election for the next president of the United States of America. Are you very confident and happy about the way our democracy is moving?
I am concerned because we are under attack. And this election tomorrow is going to, in large measure, decide the fate of the world.
My goodness, you're very dramatic. Don't you think that we'll stumble along, and just as we have in the past, didn't we watch elections all our life with Nixon and Reagan and Clinton and Bush? Why are you so dramatic about 2024?
Well, let me preface it by saying I trust in God and I have faith in our institutions as Americans. Um, but the drama comes from being plugged into this campaign for a lot of the last 30 days and watching other things and seeing the messaging that's going out and having done some reading and some study and seeing that we're under attack. And we're under attack by foreign adversaries. And some of these
Um,
messages of division are being amplified within our country um, by political actors and non-political actors.
all right, so you're speaking of attack from without. Um, Nevertheless, I often feel that the country is impregnable if it's united within. It's always from within that a country falls. Don't you think that's true?
I think you're absolutely correct. United we stand and divided we fall. And that is something that our forefathers clearly understood. In 1776, Thomas Paine, whether you like him or not, he was a pretty fiery writer and speaker. And he said, unity is our greatest strength, and we must be united. And so we have to understand that we are all Americans, that we are united by virtue of our citizenship to the United States of America, that we therefore must realize that our rights, our freedoms, our liberties, the good things that we have in this life, the possibilities that we have in this life are under attack, are under a threat by a common enemy outside of the border. I should say common enemies because it's coming from Russia and China. So we have to understand we are united. We
All
have
right.
to understand that we have to come together and understand that what is going on.
Okay, well, from what you're saying, it sounds like you're most worried about the results after the election is announced, that people won't accept it. Either if Trump wins, the Democrats will say he didn't really win, or if Kamala wins, the Trump followers will say they stole the election, and then we will be disunited. Is this the greatest threat we face?
What we have in this country, unfortunately, now appear to be two alternate realities. We seem to have the alt media at war
Hmm.
with the mainstream media. And what I have called this in other contexts is the Trump Musk insurgency against the establishment, if you will. We saw this when Jeff
Hmm.
Bezos wrote his editorial last, what was it, Monday, a week ago today,
Yes.
about the Washington Post saying, people are right. We're not telling the truth. I mean, that's total capitulation to an alternative narrative. Unfortunately, what's happened is there are people who are just simply turning each other off. And that is
Hmm.
divisive. There are people who hold two different viewpoints as far as what is going on. And the reason they hold these two totally different viewpoints are largely because of the media, the different media that's involved, but also too because people need to understand a very basic teaching the church gave us all in Inter Mirifica in paragraph 10, which was that as a user or a consumer of information, basically get the facts, from people who are credible, and find out what's going on and
Okay.
be very careful what you watch.
Okay, I'm going really to introduce you. I haven't properly introduced you at all. And then we're going to go after the facts, and I'm going to make the argument that in small podcasts like this one, even if we only are seen by a few hundred or a few thousand people, we do go for the facts. We aren't paid by anybody. We do this out of goodwill to the common good. Isn't that true? Are you being paid for this, David?
No, I am, as they say, taking it out of my hide.
All right. And actually, I'm not either. I'm just in Rome, Italy at it's 6:10 in the evening. I've just gone through a long day, and I wanted to have you on here because you are a fascinating researcher, and you've been in the archives of the FBI and the CIA, and you looked at them over about 60 or even 70 years, and what they have done, also involving our Catholic Church, our Second Vatican Council, and some other matters. And so therefore, when you look at this election, you, as a researcher, as someone who knows how secret agencies function, are a wonderful guest to have on this show. You're a lawyer, you're a Catholic, you live, I think, in South Bend or just outside of South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is located. And you're from the heartland. And so really, I don't think there's a better person in America today on the eve of this election to give us insight into what's happening, what the powers that be want to happen, what the public should look at as they look at this election, as the results come in tomorrow, and give us a general overarching view of where we are in the history of the United States of America.
Well, that's a heck of an introduction, and quite frankly, I'm very moved by it, Bob. I mean, thank you very much. I'm just honored that you should say that, because you've been doing this for many, many years, and
Well,
everything pretty much I've done,
no,
like today, is just out of the goodness of my heart to do what's right.
No, I mean, I guess I don't know if Matt, the producer, can put on a cover of your book, because you wrote one of the most fascinating books of the American interest at the Second Vatican Council and in the Roman Catholic Church, kind of hoping to move the church along during the time of the Second Vatican Council as a partner of this liberal democracy with the global economic and commercial empire. And is that true, that what your book did was give us entirely new information about what went on at the Second Vatican Council?
I think it gave us entirely new information of the context. And yes, I think that there was material that I brought out about the Vatican II Council. And believe me, it's been years and it was a lot of it. So I got to think here. But yes, I believe that there was new material that came out, especially from Monsignor Shea's archives in Orange, New Jersey, Seton Hall, where he had just volumes and volumes of notes and of discussions about Vatican II and about his view as to what was going on at Vatican II, and the theological discussions that were going on within the Catholic Church between Father Connell and Father Murray concerning the relationship of church and state and concerning this idea of religious liberty. So yes, there is new material I brought. I think I also brought to the fore new material from the Eisenhower archives and the Library of Congress that help us to understand the context here and some of the discussions that were going on too, not just geopolitically, but also too within the church, within the defenders of the Catholic position. And that's the value of the references to Father Fenton's, Monsignor Fenton's diaries, and also the papers of Father Connell. I mean, excuse me, I was
so
allowed
what we have
to look at Father Connell's papers in the basement of the Redemptorist house in Brooklyn. And I just sat there for 3 days. And I mean, around the clock looking at his papers. And I caught a few hours of sleep, but it was just fascinating to get that entire view of what was going on in the church and in the United States, and this discussion at a big level.
So I have to be very clear to those watching. When they see you, they are looking at a man almost like Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark or something. You have been a solid. Yes, you are. You've been a solitary investigator from the basement of the Redemptorists in Brooklyn, to Washington, D.C. I don't know how many places you've gone. And that summary of your book doesn't say that it's nearly 1,000 pages long. And it doesn't also tell us how many years you worked on it. I think you worked on it nearly 10 years, if not more.
I think it was about 6.5 years, and I went from places from literally from coast to coast, from Western Massachusetts to a security storage cabinet in Berkeley, California. To a library in South Carolina, to a lot of places in between, to the archives of Chicago. So um, I think there were around 30 different archives that I looked at, if I remember correctly, to include the National Archives. And the National Archives it's just a wonderful treasure for all the citizens of the United States. It's a professionally run operation, just like the
Oh, there it
Eisenhower
is.
archives were.
Okay, that's another thing. National Treasure was a story. Who was the guy who played in that? But
Was that
he's an
Nicolas Cage?
investigator. He goes, yeah, that's who you remind me of now. Nicolas Cage in National Treasure.
I'm just one guy trying to do the right thing.
Well, let's round it up to 7 years. And let's say for 7 years, you dedicated yourself to looking at how the United States government may have tried to influence the Second Vatican Council. So what does that tell us about the Holy Spirit, David? How do you interpret the role of the Holy Spirit at the Second Vatican Council and the role of the United States CIA?
Well, I think the CIA has bugged the Holy Spirit's office. However, the CIA is,
my goodness.
However, the Holy Spirit is more powerful than anyone. And I think we have to take a look at Dignitatis Humanae. You have to take a look at all the teachings of the church, and you realize that the Holy Spirit is triumphant and keeping the faith pure. So while the CIA may bug the Holy Spirit's office, the Holy Spirit still is more powerful.
Actually, discussing in our editorial offices, Matt and I have been trying to understand the Second Vatican Council and then this entire synodal process, and trying to understand to what extent it can be influenced by worldly concerns and to what extent the Holy Spirit can triumph. Did you have faith and feel that somehow the church had given in some way to what the U.S. government wanted?
Certainly not doctrinally. I believe that what happened was a lot of people accepted the spirit of Vatican II, and so they spun the meaning. And I think what you had was a movement within the church, call it the Nouvelle Theology, call it what you will. There was this spirit in the church that in large measure wanted us to forget our the meaning of certain things from the past, most specifically, I believe, Thomistic teaching. I see this in this idea of the law of nations, which I'm studying pretty intensely now. And St. Thomas Aquinas actually wrote about the ius gentium, and this was developed by Catholics from Tapparelli on up, to the 1960s. And Pope Francis just recently in March started talking about this again. And so this is this idea that a lot of Catholics forgot about.
Well, your drop even keep up with you. Essentially, I read your book and then I read it again with great pleasure and with great interest. And I'm still thinking that it needs to be read one more time. And actually, we have to look at all the footnotes, because what you're really saying is that Time Magazine, as run by Henry Luce and by his wife, Claire Booth Luce, hired a reporter whom I knew, Robert Blair Kaiser, who was only 30 years old, and he went to Rome, and they gave him 20. He came to Rome just after he published his famous book, Clerical Error, where he described what happened at council and when he was a close friend of Malachi Martin. That name will be familiar to many people viewing this. But you and we talked for almost an entire afternoon. I think it was 2002. So that's 22 years ago. He since has died. But what he told me is that he received $20,000 every month from Time Magazine, and they said, try to invite to your very palatial Vatican apartment in Monteverde, which actually is near where I am right now, just a few steps from here. And he said, you'll have room for 55, 100 people can come in your big dining room. Time Magazine was paying for the apartment. And you'll get monsignors there, you'll get diplomats from various embassies, you'll get some of the periti who are advising the cardinals and bishops who are present at the council. And you'll say that you're hoping that some type of big break will occur, some type of revolution, so the church will not be hidebound back in about 1750, but will go into the modern world. But your point is that they wanted that to happen because they wanted America's commercial interests and financial interests be supported by a global church. That was the real reason behind everything they did. But I don't still understand precisely what doctrines and attitudes and traditions they were most interested in impinging upon.
I think the big issue was church-state relations. This is something that Luce had written about back in 1927. He had mentioned Leo the 13th, excuse me, and Leo the 13th's various encyclicals concerning church and state relations, not just in Europe, but in the United States too, because Leo the 13th did talk about it in Longinquo Oceani. So I think that was their concern. And I think that their concern was to get the church to support the American system of social organization. Now, which includes, the First Amendment, church and state relations with religious liberty and freedom of religion.
Okay.
Now,
so the first point is religious liberty then.
Right.
Okay,
I think
but
that
then
right.
And so we have this saying, social kingship of Jesus Christ. In other words, over society, there's an overarching Lord who's Jesus, and political regimes which come and go, nevertheless, should honor the fundamental moral laws. How does this idea of religious freedom, can we reconcile that with the Catholic belief of the social kingship of Jesus Christ?
Well, Cardinal Stritch, back in 1957-58, told Murray, we're not going with the Protestant view of religious liberty, which I think is
Murray
what you're
who?
talking about. John Courtney Murray, the Father John
Explain
Courtney
who
Murray.
Murray was.
Well, Murray was a
All right, and
Jesuit
he is the
theologian,
sort of
and Cardinal Stritch was he was the cardinal in charge of the Archdiocese of Chicago, and he said we cannot, as Catholics, accept the First Amendment, which disestablishes a church, as the thesis or as the ideal. We cannot accept that. We can accept it as an hypothesis. We can accept it as something to be tolerated because it will allow for a greater good to happen and it will avoid evil. Because the First Amendment, I mean, religious liberty and religious freedom, as understood by the First Amendment, by the American Constitution or Bill of Rights, that came about as a matter of practicality. I mean, it was actually a pretty good idea because you had a lot of different religions in 13 little countries that were formerly colonies that then became states. And so you had a lot of different ideas, a lot of different people, a lot of diversity then. Diversity is defined differently now, but you had a lot of diversity then. And so what you had was this so-called liberal idea, capital L, that found manifestation in the First Amendment, this idea of religious liberty that does not establish a church, allows people to do what they want. We're not going to coerce anybody to do anything, which brings me to another point. But this allowed people to come together. at the same time that you had liberalism at the national level, you also had this idea of federalism, which means that you have this idea of subsidiarity. Some people at certain levels take care of certain things, other people take care of other things. We have the states, they're going to run their own situation. That's the 9th and the 10th Amendment. They got certain powers to do certain things. Okay. Now, what the Catholic Church and America are totally in agreement on is you cannot coerce people to join the Catholic faith or any religion. You cannot coerce them. America and the church are totally in agreement on this factor. Where we disagree is on the ideal. And the church says the ideal is to have the Catholic Church established and the Catholic religion to be the basis of the laws of the country. And then this is where you get into the divine positive law versus the natural law discussion or argument. As Father Connell put it very well, Father Francis Connell represented the Catholic tradition. He was a Redemptorist priest. He was called the Catholic theologian of America. He was a dean at the Catholic University of America, passed in 1967. What Father Connell, also known as Frankie to his friends, he said, the issue is not that the state has to follow the Catholic Church. The issue is that the civil leaders have got to obey the laws of Christ. That's the issue. And that is where the tension has been in America.
You made a study of the Second Vatican Council, and it's 1,000 pages, and you show interest by our FBI and our CIA in supporting certain ideas at the council. Do you think they succeeded?
No, I don't think so. That was my conclusion. I don't think any earthly government can defeat the Holy Spirit. No. What happened, though, is that the meaning of the documents were spun.
All right.
They were spun. The documents were spun, and people forgot in large measure our patrimony. So for example,
okay. So wait. You said wait. You said no. Okay. Well, you said no, and now you're saying yes.
No. They did not change doctrine. The government did not change doctrine. But what happened is a lot of people thought doctrine changed, and so they spun the documents, spun the meaning of the documents to something they didn't mean. I know that seems somewhat contradictory, but that's the reality. That's my conclusion.
Well, who spun the documents?
Oh, I think a lot of bad actors did. I think a lot of people in the church and outside the church who said this is what the documents mean and this is how you have to use them. And you have to forget about everything that went before. There are a lot of people that did that.
Okay. Do you feel the documents,
priests, laity?
All right. So how old are you? Do you remember those years and the church even prior to the council and after the council? Do you have any memory?
Well, I'm 67, so I'm trying to think. I remember we'd got Life magazine, so I remember all of those articles that would come in and some of the photos. But I don't actually, remember the council. I remember when the changes came in. I mean, I remember going to Latin Mass when I was a little boy, and then it changed in 69, and we started being given religious books with black and white photographs of potholes, half filled with water, and discussions of the inner city, and I don't know what, of general terms, and we just simply we're not given the basics of the faith, and this was in Catholic schools. I remember those days.
Okay. Well, was this a part of a kind of secularizing process that the council is to blame for, or you're saying the council itself was okay, but it was spun?
I think the council was spun. I mean, you have to take a look at the wording of the documents, and those are pretty solid documents. They have some pretty good words in there, like common good. Now, um, some people have argued that sometimes it's ambiguous. I think that you have to understand what, as I can't think of his name. He's an Irish priest, a Jesuit. He just died. Um, he died a couple years ago. You have to understand that the documents were written a certain way in an epidectic, panegyric, we're all in it together
Like,
style. It was not written in this old Thomistic style. And that's a poor use of words, I understand, but it was written in a certain style, a certain viewpoint. But that's far different from the meaning that we should ascribe to the words.
all right. Okay. I wanted to get more from you on this, but I'm going to shift now. The church did start to make changes. Perhaps it was due to spinning what really were good teachings, but maybe had a few time bombs in there that could be interpreted a different way, and they ran with that. I want to ask you one question on the liturgy. You said the liturgy changed. Was that part of the sort of reform and secularizing and freedom of religion agenda that the United States government wanted?
I don't know. I mentioned just now. Yeah, I remember the Latin Mass, but look, I'm not a guy to talk to about liturgy. I don't know. So I don't know if that was planned, if that was something that was in the works. I don't know.
Hmm.
I know that there
Okay.
are Vatican II documents about ecclesiology, about liturgy. I really haven't studied them. I really cannot opine on that. I really did not focus on that in the work that I did. And once again,
Okay.
I
Did
refer.
you
I'm
ever
sorry.
deal
I
with
referenced the Latin
finances
Mass
and
as a frame of reference. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
no,
Bob. There's a
no,
time lag.
I thought you also dealt with finance and interest. Yeah, there's about 2 seconds time lag. Um, what about global acceptance of a global economic system with interest rates, et cetera, which the church always had problems with interest rates, usury.
Well, um, yeah, I'm probably not the guy to talk to about usury, but I know that there were different factors that had to be examined to determine if usury is, in fact, being practiced. You looked at things like the value of money, inflation, uh, and things like that. Um, one thing when you advance or promote a certain agenda, it tends to get people all together. That is one dynamic. And so I think, in a way, what you saw after World War II was the power of, of America, economically, politically, militarily, uh, bringing about this peace in the world that is now starting to break down. And
Okay.
and a big part of that uh, came with the projection of certain ideas that dealt, with the dignity of the human being. I mean, Pope John the 23rd referenced that, and dealt with the person as the object of all of these systems, whether it be the state or the international community or the economic system. But it's the person in the family which is supposed to be the object of these systems for their proper and full development. And the American system
All
helped
right.
focus on the person.
All right. I guess I'd like to ask you, um, in this election tomorrow, let's shift gears because we're on the night before what you think is the most important election of our lifetime. You started the podcast with that. Give us your understanding of what's going to happen. What do you predict will happen?
If I could predict what happened, I'd be a billionaire. And then I would build you an office right there outside the Vatican. This is really close. I mean, I read the news again today, and the polls are just canceling each other out. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know.
Okay.
There's a
Okay.
lot of
What are the
I don't know who's going to win.
well? What is the sensible judgment, both about the two candidates and about the parties and viewpoints they represent? We might say the people behind them, the elites behind them. Bobby Kennedy Jr. came out in favor of Trump. Elon Musk has come out in favor of Trump, but Hollywood and all sorts of people have come out in favor of Kamala, and they've said that Trump will be a fascist dictator. So just discuss this from the perspective of the heartland of America, a middle American. Which of these things is baloney, and what do you think is the truth?
Well, you're going to cause me to lose more friends. I'm losing a lot of friends the way it is. But I think
Well,
what I look. I think what we got with Trump Musk is a nonviolent insurgency. Okay, you clearly have a set of the elites. A lot of it is from Silicon Valley. A lot of them are from Silicon Valley. But you also have a lot of other real estate elites. You got other financial elites that are backing, and business elites that are backing Trump. And Musk with X and with the alternative media, is really a very powerful force in this insurgency. And it is an insurgency to take power from what another group of elites that I call the establishment. And you kind of get that sense by virtue of the fact that, you have some Republicans going over and supporting the Democrat candidate, Harris. And, you got the Hollywood people, and you got, other financial and ideological people supporting Harris. So you have this struggle that's going on, and it's taking place institution by institution. We saw that with the Washington Post last week that we were talking about a little bit earlier. That is an institution in the United States. It's part of the media. At the time of John Courtney Murray and at the time of Vatican II, American power really consisted of three major centers. It was the mainstream media, which was very limited. It was very limited. It was not like today. It was the mainstream media. They were pretty much all in lockstep, and they unified people. We were unified under the mainstream media. Then you had the intelligence agencies, the government agencies, law enforcement like that. And then you had the powerful private commercial interests. And they were all pretty much together, moving out into the world, advancing, the American proposition for the world. And it brought peace to the world. That's the reality. And it did bring prosperity. I mean, some places did better than others. I get that. Okay. But at the same time, you've had about 80 years of peace. And now that's starting to fall down or be deconstructed, however you want to term it. That's another discussion. And so what you have now is you have a split. You have a division in these American institutions of power that is used to project American power around the globe. And so you have the Trump Musk insurgency, as I call them, trying to wrest power from this other set of elites. And you can see that Musk is now turning his attention to the New York Times, because that's a huge influencer of people, not just in the United States, but around the world. At the same time, like you said, you have generals coming out who know Trump, who work with Trump, saying this guy is going to be a fascist or fascistic. And, we need to be really, really careful. And we have to listen to what people say. I mean, look, either what they say they mean or they don't mean. And sometimes whatever they say, whether they mean it or not, it's a bad thing. Okay. I mean, Trump has said some things, whether he means it or not, they're bad. And we need to listen to people who've got some expertise, some experience in government, and we need to give credence to what these people are saying. And the beauty of the internet is it allows you to go out there and find out what people are saying without a filter. You know, I don't need somebody to spin it. I don't need somebody to give me commentary on what General Kelly said. I don't need somebody to give me commentary on what Donald Trump said. I don't need somebody to give me commentary on what Harris said. I mean, I can just listen to what they said and I can go from there. And then you can go to intelligent people who know the situation and who know the issues. So what you're really seeing is a type of insurgency in this country, which is affecting how we are going to act towards the world. That to me is the central issue. And I know a lot of people are tied up with the whole issue of abortion. And I understand that. I get it because we've been told for years that's the central issue. That's important. But it's also a tool to get people out to vote. And the reality is Roe has been overturned. So the issue is now down at the states. And that's primarily where the fight is going to be. There are other cultural issues that can be dealt with by the courts and can be fought within the courts. But foreign policy in this day and age, when China is resurgent and Russia is working with China in the global South, and they've got very different views of the world, very different views of the world. These guys are authoritarian, they are autocratic, they are tyrants, they are dictators, and they promote ideologies that squelch the individual, ideologies, and they promote an agenda that hurts us and will harm us in this country. Not just our freedoms, but our success and our economic freedom.
Mm.
And at the same time, it threatens the world order. I listened for a week. I mean, at the end of September, the United Nations General Assembly has got what they call debate session, and all 193 countries, have something to say one at a time. So you listen to that for 6 days. I had 6 headaches every night, but I listened to it, every day. And it's a recurring theme is the countries of the world want a safe world order, where peace is guaranteed, where you just can't walk into another country and take property, where you resolve your disputes peaceably. And they want these guarantees. They want their sovereignty guaranteed. And yes, they want some reforms of the United Nations, especially the Security Council with the problems with the veto there. And they want reforms of the international financial system. And how that's going to work out, I don't know. There are different ideas that are out there on the table. Some of those ideas are tied to the Russians and Chinese. Others are tied to us and the Europeans. And so there's a discussion going on about these international institutions and providing the economic and financial lifeblood of countries around the world. So you have this struggle going on, and you have China and Russia at the UN. Okay. At the UN, they're saying, we're going to get rid of this international order. We're going to change it. Okay. Well, I think should cause people cause for concern when you have Russia walk into another country and China suppressing the Uyghurs and their attempts in the South China Sea. I think we really, they're saying the South Sea is theirs. That goes against the law. The law of nations. The School of Salamanca from the Catholics says the seas belong to everybody. And there was a UN arbitral award under the UN Convention for the Law of the Seas. This is the South China Sea, belongs to everybody. China ignores it. Okay, well, why is that important? Because freedom of navigation is a fundamental concept in how the world gets along. This is something the church has always recognized. Nobody owns the seas. Nobody owns the seas. But China is saying they own the South China Sea for one reason or another. So this is a very troubling thing. We're hearing over and over again historical claims to property. And, these countries are basing a lot of what they do on a supranationalism, which, again, the Catholic Church has condemned time after time.
Okay, David, I want to drill down here on two things. Inside of America, there are elites, which we might call globalists. They seem to be against a continued important role or central role for the United States. They want to kind of diminish the U.S., actually weaken the U.S., so that we become part of a kind of concert of nations, a kind of globalist order. Do you think this is a betrayal? Do you think these are, in a sense, treasonous traitors? Or do you think our role as the sort of indispensable nation, the most important, powerful nation, does need to come to an end?
Um, you know, I mean, we've probably made some mistakes over the years, but I believe we've been very benign. I mean, if we actually finance China and its rise, um, and
That's true.
I am very concerned that our elites, at least some of them, may be losing interest in this whole project. Mark Faber, the famous investor, said, um, when the elites get tired of liberalism and democracy, they're just going to pull the plug on it. So I think, Bob, there's a lot of evidence to support what you're saying. That there are elites that are losing interest in this
Okay.
project.
Okay. And the second aspect, I remember walking once in Westminster Cathedral, and I saw all the lords of England with their long cloaks on and their shoes, boots, and their swords. And they would say Lord Salisbury, and he was the viceroy of India, and they were impressive men. Now our congressmen and senators seem somehow to be in the service of the pharmaceutical companies or the different defense industries. I don't know that we respect them on that level of having, when we would say senator in the past, we would say that's a person of great dignity. Do you think our elite political class is corrupt?
No, I don't. I think that you have some individuals who are, but I think that this class is working or has been working to keep it together in large measure. I mean, there are some that are, that are corrupt, but I just can't buy into a narrative that says everybody is corrupt, everybody's bad, this whole system is bad. Because if you buy into that narrative, well, then you're delegitimating your own country. I think you have to look at it on a case by case basis. Now, we know that money in politics can be very corrupting. We know that, but um, I see a lot of public servants working very hard to do what is right. And what is realistically the alternative to this? Is it Vladimir Putin? I mean, he's a billionaire. He owns $200 billion worth of assets, and he shares the rulership of that country with other oligarchs. And you can't unelect these guys. When he wins an election, he considers it a defeat if he gets 98% of the vote. I mean, this is kind of, we at least have a say. We have a say. We have the ability to reform it and to fix it. And despite what all the pundits and all the negative press is, we have that ability. We have that power, and we can do that. We can make those changes. We can
All
fix
right.
things.
Okay, you're a man of noble ideals. And
Yeah.
how do you think then this election will turn out? How do you feel you should vote or others should vote on the basis of what? And how will this then either help or harm the country?
Well, I think the fundamental issue of this election, as I said, is what do we turn in or do we turn out or do we stay fixed outside? I am concerned with things that I am hearing from one of the candidates who is talking about um, there's discussions when it comes to Ukraine about how to make peace in Ukraine, uh, where you basically make Ukraine neutral. I hear talk from one candidate, which is a violation of sovereignty, which is a bad idea because it gives Putin what he wants. It encourages him and other tyrants. Um, I think that what we're dealing with too is we have one candidate, who's talking about um, reforming the agencies. I don't know what that means. That's a little scary um, because I think members of that candidate are of the view that these agencies comprise some evil empire, and they want to break them apart and disassemble them.
Hmm.
And that is, I don't think, is going to be good for America in the world. I also hear talk, about putting tariffs on allies, which isn't necessarily a good idea. We can build, um, we can build our economy. We can improve industry in this country. We can reindustrialize with government subsidies. So these are policy things you hear from different corners. Once again, you got to go and look at the candidates and hear what they say. And I think we have to stay outward looking, and we have to recognize that we are in a world of enemies. Regardless who wins, we have got to keep our eyes on the enemies outside, because if we don't, then we're in trouble, and we're being divided by these people outside this country. So I hope that, no matter who gets elected, we deal with the international issues properly. That is my hope.
Okay. I wonder now, we've gone about 46 minutes. If we have some questions, maybe do we have something we could pull up here and we could respond to what readers are saying or what viewers are saying? Um, I was a little surprised at your last remarks because I didn't know in advance what you were going to say. And you've kind of given a vision of this election. In a sense, what you said is whatever happens, you want us to pull together because the nation is under threat. That's your message.
Yeah, we are. We're being divided. We're being divided with alternate narratives, and we need to be aware of that. And part of this alternate narrative is to say, don't listen, don't talk to the other side. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said, you don't believe anything comes from New York Times. I said, nothing, not even editorials. No, nothing. Well, that's extreme. I mean, come on. You've got to read. You've got to get a lot of different viewpoints. And what you have to understand is that there is a process going on that says America's the bad guy. Okay. And that is very dangerous. And we're seeing that from a number of different sources, some in the alt media, some elsewhere. They're telling us that we're the bad guys, that we've done evil, and you cannot accept that. You have to take a look at specific instances and evaluate it. So, people talk about the global war on terror. Well, there was a United Nations general resolution that said we're going to fight global terror. Well, the whole world signed in on that one. Okay. And so when the U.S. went to Afghanistan, that was pursuant, again, this is by way of an example, that was pursuant to a UN resolution also. And so that's what you have to keep in mind when you look at the world. And I think what you're doing is you're getting
Hmm.
you're getting
Well, I mean, when you
a
speak of the
narrative. Oh, go ahead. No. Okay, so so right here, this is a contentious
okay, well,
question.
now we have a
Right. This is a
okay. Let's
contentious
read the
question.
question. Patty Leather,
Okay.
thank you, Patty. The FBI and Department of Justice has been persecuting Catholics. The enemy is in D.C. Why shouldn't we abolish the CIA and FBI? Very, very polemical question.
Well, of course, it's a contentious question, and this is the kind of question that characterizes events. Okay, persecuting. Is it persecution? Is it persecution if the FBI investigates thinking that there is a threat? No, it's not persecution. We have to get down to the facts. And you have to
Hmm.
understand that there are media outlets that spin the facts and they don't give you all the facts. So you have to study what is going on. If you disband the CIA and the FBI, then you leave the United States defenseless. So who benefits from that? Well, the foreign enemies do. The foreign enemies do. And that means all the people in the world suffer, because then you've got strongmen who will walk into countries and say, well, you're not Russian, you're not Chinese, so you'll be part of the community, but you're just going to be a second class citizen. So this is the kind of attitude that we are fighting. This is what that question is the result of misinformation, disinformation. Because disinformation is the actual piping of lies into a target audience of a target country. And it's very dangerous.
Okay. We have maybe one more comment here. Let's try for John Paul Sandoval. Thank you, John. John Paul. The U.S. presidential election has far-reaching effects. I would suggest it is absolutely crucial.
Oh, I agree. I agree. This is a crucial
David?
election. I think it's absolutely crucial. Yes. I think that is probably the most important issue, is how the two campaigns view the world and what they say about world leaders and what they say about the situation, you know, in the world. And I go back what J.D. Vance said. I mean, you have to, you know, about him saying Russia is not our enemy, they're a competitor. I mean, Mr. Vance, Russia said they're our enemy. I mean, if you're the father of the family and the enemy presents itself to you, um, and you don't realize that, you're kind of a danger to your own family. You know, all the candidates need to understand this. They need to understand that Russia and China is our enemy.
Well, I admit, but perhaps I am too naive. I mean, after 1991, when the Soviet Union fell, there seemed to be an opportunity when we might have found a way to get along. And Yeltsin, a kind of drunken leader of Russia, was anxious to have American support. And when Putin was brought in about the year 2000, he had even said maybe we could be part of NATO, and there wouldn't have been this division in Europe. I just feel somehow a series of steps were taken that brought our antagonism and our enmity forward rather than a possible friendship.
Well, I suppose everybody can do things different when you look in hindsight. But you know, one thing that you had when Yeltsin left was Putin was very nationalist. He's very nationalistic, and so he was going to resurrect, you know, Russian nationalism. And he looked at guys like Ivan Ilyin, Alexander Dugin, Lev Gumilev. These were guys with very strong ethnic identity, and so he was going to base his country on that. And what you see with Putin is you saw this aggressive growth, this aggressive movement outwards, you know, into what, Chechnya, Georgia, you know, other countries. I mean, then, you know, Ukraine, Moldova. Yeah, you start to see this move out, you know, to destabilize and then take over these countries. And what you're seeing is a playbook that they're executing, and we're seeing it right now in Ukraine. You know, one thing that turned out to be a lie, because a lot of us operated on lies for a long time. We accepted a view of reality that you know, we're the bad guys. Well, you know, one big lie we were told was that, well, you know, NATO promised never to move east. Well, Gorbachev said, and the Brookings Institution just came up with the information, or that actually it's been out there for a few years. I just came across it, and other people brought it to my attention. Gorbachev said there was no move. There was no promise to move east, to not move east. There was no promise to freeze the borders of NATO. So, you know, once again, we really have to do our homework. We have to do our research. You have to talk to people who are getting in there and find out what the facts are.
Well, I
and
will
and
still
one
say that it seems to me that what? Why are you
Well,
laughing?
I'm laughing because I'm looking at one of the notes. So this is one of the messages here. See, if I don't agree that Russia's the good guy, okay, then I'm a warmonger. Okay, that's
Right.
one of the messages that's put out there. Okay, if I say we have to defend the international order, we have to defend, the rule of law
Yeah.
in the world. Okay, well, I'm a warmonger. I want to start a war. This is psyops. Okay, it's played over and over again in the, especially in the alt media, and you see this in many different forums. And what I'm saying it takes two to tango. And right now, we are trying to defend and maintain a world order. I think the Biden response to the invasion of Ukraine has left a lot to be desired. But everybody agrees, everybody in the world. I mean, country after country, not everybody, but I say the vast majority of countries, probably more than 2/3, maybe even more than that. And a lot of legal scholars say it was an illegal and immoral invasion.
Hmm. All right. I do agree that the world will take a dramatic change depending on how this turns out. People may regard America as they did after our flight from Afghanistan. Do you remember that, August 15th, 2021,
Yeah, that was
from
pretty sad.
Kabul?
That was very it was very harmful to us, and that was not a good thing.
No,
But I'm telling you, there are themes being repeated over
no.
and over in the alt media, over and over, and you can pick them up, and they're it's psyops, folks, and it's coming from outside the country as well as inside the country.
Hmm.
Oh, here's another one. Putin was provoked.
All right. Let's
Oh
have one
boy,
more.
oh boy. If you say Putin, Putin is okay. So the argument they say is, well, Putin's provoked, thereby he's justified in going. No. Provocation is not a justification under international law.
Okay. Well, uh,
And he wasn't provoked.
okay. First, I'll read this thing, and then we'll wrap this up. Hello to all from an well. Oh, hello to all from an Irby at Orby monthly supporter in the USA. I find great value in these streaming. Thank you, Pink Nickel Lid. Well, we can leave that aside. I think there is a complex reality which we do face, and I'm really very concerned also about the inner life of the United States, and in some way the family life, the dignity of the jobs we have, and we're heading into a tremendous cultural and economic shift as robots come in and artificial intelligence comes in, and we've got so many kids that are put on to Ritalin and these substances for their school years, and something seems to be unhealthy in America in many ways. Don't you feel that we are somehow not the country that we were 30, 40 years ago? Don't you see that, David?
Oh, we're divided. We've been divided because you had the rise of the internet and the rise of alt media. And I was talking to a colleague the other day, and they said, "Yeah, this really started with the end of the fairness doctrine." And I remember the fairness doctrine. I remember, writing about it. And I think that's a correct assessment because it required the media to be pretty, even-handed when it dealt with people. So what you have is you've got people in this country and outside the country finding grievances, and they're blowing these grievances out of proportion. And they're thinking, well, everybody's like that. I mean, the family is collapsing. Look, Bob. I went to church yesterday. The church was filled. I went to Catholic mass. The church was filled with Catholic families. Mom, dad, kids. I mean, it was just filled. So what they write and what reality is, are oftentimes two different things. And what you will see with a lot of these propagandists, these psyops people, these alt media guys who also want, eyeballs while advancing either wittingly or unwittingly a negative agenda. What they do is they take things out of context and they think that one situation is the whole situation. This is the way it is. Instead of one little isolated event, you have people in the alt media just frankly lying. They're lying. And you can't check what they're saying. You can't check what their facts are. And so you get this distortion of what reality is. So you have to study reality, and you have to go to people like Intermerifica says, the people who know, who are able to look at it and look at it objectively. And you have to look at your own life experiences. I mean, I've been hearing, that it's the end of the United States for years, but we're still here and we're strong. So I think what you have to do, you have to.
Of
Okay,
the
no, go ahead.
ordinary life. No, from Notre Dame, from South Bend, Indiana, you're seeing people in church, you're seeing families, you're seeing students, you're seeing America still strong. And in a way, that's your message tonight.
Yeah. I see more than ever what we're talking about here is we are our brother's keeper. More than ever, we have to help each other. And in our system, you're able to help each other a lot. You're in close contact. You have a lot of freedom to work with and be part of groups that help people. So that allows us to come together. We have that liberty to do, and it's a wonderful thing. I see. I see good things. We have to do away with the negativity. We have to do away with this doom and gloom. I mean, this is a great country. You can work where you want. You can do what you want. You can be what you want. You want to have a family. You can have a family. You can make these things happen, and more.
All right, David. We have gone over an hour, and we've got to wrap this up. You've said some very beautiful things in the last few moments. You've spoken almost like an evangelist, not just for the country, but for the human spirit. You say our freedom has enabled us to be in a position where we can live our lives and do noble and good things. Totalitarian government, we'd be in trouble, but so far we still have a free country. And why don't you, that'll be the end of the program.
Yes, our system, our structure allows for a very resilient country, very resilient society, and one that we can change. And it requires us to come together to do that. And look, this country has always known that there's diversity in this population, that there are different people. We have always known that, but we have institutions, we have laws, we have courts that allow us to work out our disputes without there having to be shooting or without there having to be an overthrow of the government. We have institutions that work, and they always have. Maybe there's a little glitch here and there, but we can fix that and we can make it happen. So it's a hopeful message. We need to come together. We have a mission that's been given to us by God, and it is a mission for the betterment of the world in our own sense. And we can do that and we can achieve that, but we have to come together. And this is where the Catholic Church and the Catholic religion comes in and purifies these thoughts and purifies our society and makes us even a better people and a better country.
All right. We'll do it for tonight from Rome, Italy, where I am, from South Bend, Indiana, David Wemhoff, a scholar, a researcher, a lawyer, a Catholic, a man, and under our free system, make the country free and work for people, for families, for the church groups. And with this hopeful message on the eve of the election tomorrow, we sign off tonight on the 4th of November, 2024.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.